Well, welcome to another amazing episode of the Marketplace Pastors Podcast. Look, we are rounding off an amazing season three. Season three, this is the final episode of season three. And I hope that you have been enjoying every single episode as we prepare for season four. We've got a lot of amazing guests for you in season four, so you don't want to miss them. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, and make sure you invite. Today, in our final episode for season three, we are going to round off our conversation again, talking about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. As I mentioned on the last episode, October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And every month in October, I use my voice to amplify this amazing cause that we want to raise awareness around, because we realize that this is a particular social issue that a lot of people suffer in silence. And oftentimes with domestic violence, we recognize physical scars, bruises, and a lot of times that's the phone calls that people get. Someone put their hands on them, strangled them, shot them, stabbed them, right? And those are the stories that get our attention. But oftentimes there are types of abuses that are happening in the homes and in the community that a lot of people are just not aware of. And so what we want to do is we want to continue to shine a light on this social issue that really needs to be highlighted in a major way. And so I'm so blessed to have in the studio with me today none other than Dr. Deborah Dantzler. She's the chief geek at 3D Psychotherapy LLC, and she's my new friend. I love her. She shares so many amazing tips and tools with me, and I see why. Dr. Dantzler has 27 years in behavioral health. She has a Doctor of Philosophy degree in human services with a concentration in addiction. Dr. Dantzler is also a licensed and board certified professional counselor in the state of Georgia with a master's in addiction counseling. I am so excited for her to be joining me today. Welcome to the Marketplace Pastors Podcast. I am so excited to dig into this conversation with you today. Introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about how you got into this work and the amazing things that you're doing at 3D Psychotherapy.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Chai. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today during this Domestic Violence Awareness Month to be talking a little bit about the kind of invisible wounds, the less visible wounds that come with narcissistic abuse and being in antagonistic relationships. And so thank you so much for having me. As you said, I'm a chief geek, or I'm the owner of 3D Psychotherapy, which is a group psychotherapy practice here in Decatur, Georgia, where we work with adults and we work with insecure overachievers to help bring serenity to their chaotic world. And a lot of times that chaos that's in their world is there as a direct result of being in these antagonistic relationships. And it's a term that we're not too familiar with, but I'll explain as to how we are shifting the language so that we can shift the focus and really help people who are experiencing negative impacts from these interactions.
Yeah, so it's a term that I've never heard before. When you and I talked before, we talked about how, all we heard for a good 6 to 8 months was narcissist this and narcissist that, and everybody was a narcissist, and everybody was diagnosing people with narcissism, right? And I was just like, there's got to be more to this, right? There's got to be more to this conversation, right? And when we think
Absolutely.
Yes. And when we think about domestic violence, a lot of times that's where it stems from. It stems from these unhealthy behavior patterns that we observe in the lives of ourselves and in the lives of those that we're in relationship with. So tell us, what is antagonistic relational stress?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So, as you are correct, especially for the last number of years, the term narcissist, narcissism, narcissistic abuse has been on the rise. So, if you Google it, more and more people are searching because it's more in the public zeitgeist around this is something that people are experiencing. But what we know to be true is when we look at the actual diagnostic criteria for a person to have narcissistic personality disorder, and we look at that, the prevalence rates of that in the population, we're actually at less than 1%. We're about 0.6% of the population actually qualify and meet the diagnostic criteria. So what does that mean, right? If only the small portion actually meet diagnostic criteria, then how do we have all these narcissists and the large growing number within the population of people that are showing up this way? And so, with that, the researchers like Dr. Ramani Dvarsala and other experts who really dedicate their life to the study of these patterns and behavior have really started to make a shift in mindset, a shift in awareness, a shift in how we look at this and how we engage in the conversation, for a couple of different reasons, right? For one reason is, if I am the therapist and somebody comes in to work with me, and they're showing up with things like anxiety, depression, having trauma responses, and those things are very acutely connected to their relationship with another person that we might describe as being a narcissist or having these particular behavior characteristics. As the therapist, I can't diagnose that person based on what you're experiencing, right? So you're the person that's here needing help. This is the person's behavior that is impacting the consequences for you as you show up to work with me. So as we are talking about that, so we shift from this language of narcissistic abuse recovery to the relationship between the narcissistic personality or cluster B personality, um, and the person that is showing up and being negatively impacted. That is called antagonistic relational stress. That is what this person is experiencing, and that's generally what brings them in the door, because they're having all of that. Like I said, they're difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, a lot of self-doubt. They're experiencing a lot of negative consequences, but those consequences are directly related to that abusive relationship that they're interacting in. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. Because oftentimes, one of the things that I found that when I'm working with women on developing their story is helping them to focus on how it impacted them, not necessarily focusing on the abuser, right? Or their story, telling their story, but really telling your personal story and how these relationship patterns affected them, right? And why they came to a conclusion that they needed to end the relationship or they needed to get to a place of safety, right? And so, how do we recognize this pattern in relationships? Oftentimes, people don't really realize that they're in an unhealthy relationship, right? Because they think that this is normal. They think it's normal because my mom and them act like that. My daddy did that, right? My grandparents act like that. This is what my aunts and uncles do, right? They've seen it perpetuated over and over and over again. So in their mind's eye, they feel like, hey, this is normal, right?
Mhm.
But when do you recognize, personally that this is not normal? How does this show up in the lives of the clients that you serve?
Okay, that's a really great question. And so, um, the awareness, I think, starts in the body, right? We know something's not right, right? This idea of when we're in relationship and we're interacting with these personalities, these antagonistic personalities, uh, we're going to have a lot of constriction, a lot of anxiety, a lot of self doubt. We might be, like I said, losing sleep, interfering with our activities of daily living and our basic functioning, might affect our productivity at work or raising our kids. So it shows up in a lot of different ways. And in fact, as you said, because this is so silent, it's like, think about like a rock in the river and the water is kind of going down the hill, crossing the river over the rock over time. What happens to that rock?
Mm-hmm.
It's a rock, it's solid, but over time, if that water keeps going over it, it wears it down, right? And so that's what these relationships do. They wear the person down over time. And like you said, it could be normalized in their community. So they're not necessarily acutely aware that they're being worn down until it starts to show up in the body. And it can also show up in our physical health, high blood pressure, cardiovascular issues, weight gain, like I said, insomnia, GI. Oh my goodness. A lot of gut issues, right? It really impacts us physically as well as emotionally. And
Mm-hmm.
just this sense of being disoriented a lot of times, right? A lot of self-doubt, like, did I actually do that? Was, maybe I'm just forgetful, or maybe I'm misinterpreting things. A lot of self-blame and ownership of things that are actually a part of the direct result of that interaction with that antagonistic person. And
Mm-hmm.
so things we can be aware of in those interactions are whether the person that we're in relationship with, and again, let me be specific. We're not just talking about intimate partner relationships. We could be talking about sibling relationships. We could be talking about colleagues or bosses in the workplace. We could be talking about parent-child relationships. We could be talking about interpersonal dynamics within the church community, right? Wherever there is an antagonistic personality and somebody being negatively impacted by that personality, that's when we start to see some of these patterns.
So good. I mean, even self-esteem, right? I mean, I know when I have, done the evaluations and I've done some of the testing around this particular issue, one of the things that showed up for me heavy was it impacted my self-esteem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the relationship that I was in was really abusive in that it tore me down a lot. My self identity, right? The self confidence I had when they met me, I no longer had, right? I found myself walking on eggshells a lot, not being able to speak my truth, even in love, right? Even in kindness. And even when I did say something, was made to feel bad about speaking up about it, to the point where I became silent and never would even say anything at all, right? Which was, I know, by design. But to your point, do you also see that these type of relationships can also impact your self-esteem as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I often ask clients, can you bleed to death from too many paper cuts? And the answer is yes, because that's what happens in these relationships. Each interaction is like a paper cut to the person that's experiencing this, and over time that accumulation of paper cuts is really what allows us to bleed out, so to speak, and we're bleeding out our self-esteem because they're these characteristics that the antagonistic personality has, right? And some of the things we can be mindful of are whether that person that we're interacting with is highly conflictual,
Mm,
right? Do they, instead of being, a lot of us, most people are conflict avoidant or conflict aware. These people might even seek out conflict, right? They might be stirring the pot. So are they highly conflictual, right? Is that antagonistic person very rigid, right? Is it their way or the highway? Oh, you're making egg salad that way? Right? Like these kind of, things, very rigid. Then this overarching category of antagonistic, where under this category, there are a few things. One is gaslighting. Oh, you must have misunderstood. Oh, that never happened. Your memory sucks, right? Manipulation. Well, if you don't do this for me, then I'm not gonna, do this for you. Or I can't believe that I do all this for you and you can't do anything, that sort of thing. Hypercriticism and belittling, right? Right. And so all of those fall under this A category. So CRA, right? And then V we have, depending on, and there are about 7 different types of narcissistic personalities. But here we're being a little bit more broad. We're talking about antagonistic personalities in general, and we're going to talk a little bit about the 5-factor personality model, trait model. But as we're talking about different types of narcissistic personalities, there are kind of 2 major ones. And in this V, we're going to see either the person is very volatile, right? Oh, they can go from 0 to 100. Oh, why are you questioning me about that? What are you, right? Just really like volatile, or very victimy. Woe is me. I could have been a contender. Nobody understands me. I could have been successful if it wasn't for da 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 da. Right? This volatile or victimy presentation. And then the E is they're very entitled. Right? They expect everyone to do everything for them, and they don't kind of give anything back. Right? This great sense of entitlement. Right? And then the last one is dysregulated emotions. Right? Do their emotions and actions match? Are they not in touch with their emotions? Do they have very low EQ, very low emotional intelligence? So that's what we call the craved model of kind of awareness, right? So CRAVED. So that conflictual, rigid, antagonistic, volatile or victimy, entitled, and then dysregulated emotions.
That's so good. I love that. I learned something new, the crave model. But one of the things you mentioned is the
5-factor personality trait model. Those are kind of characteristics that the antagonistic personality will show up and be. Those are kind of actions they'll take, right? But a trait model is a relatively stable internal characteristic that is inferred from a person's behavior. It includes attitudes, feelings, and habits. So the trait theories explain personalities in terms of characteristics that are thought to determine behavior instead of that diagnostic criteria that we talked about earlier. Because again, everybody and their cousin is throwing out this word narcissistic personality, but less than 1% of the actual population meets diagnostic criteria. But that doesn't mean these behaviors aren't real.
True.
That doesn't mean that we're not being negatively impacted by them.
True.
So they're shifting. That's what Dr. Ramani and the other researchers are doing. They're kind of shifting from this diagnostic focus to this actual behavioral trait model. And so actually the 5-factor trait model of assessment is also with an acronym, right? And that one is, so there's, and the acronym is OCEAN, is how we would remember it, right? When we talk about the 5-factor trait model, these are what a healthy personality would look like. To have a healthy personality, a person is going to exhibit openness. They're going to exhibit conscientiousness. They're going to have a level of extroversion. They're going to have agreeableness. And they're going to have low neuroticism, right? And so the 3 parts of the 5-factor model that may indicate, I may be interacting with an antagonistic personality are if the person has an extremely high degree of extroversion, right? This is what we typically know as our grandiose narcissist, right? And they'd have a very low level of agreeableness. They're very contrary, very oppositional, very conflictual in their behavior. And then they'd also have a very high level of neuroticism. And so that's that level of like kind of issues around the entitlement and that belittling. It's really kind of a few ways that shows up. But those would be the 3 factors that if we saw these patterns in somebody's behavior, we could say, this person has an antagonistic personality, versus labeling and trying to be diagnostic with any of the cluster Bs, whether that would be narcissistic personality, borderline, antisocial, even psychopathy and sociopathy. So, yeah.
That's a lot. You see all these words she done gave? I gotta go look up all of this information. Is it possible to be in a healthy relationship with this personality type?
So, Pastor Chai, it is possible to be in relationship with them, meaning interacting with them, but in terms of a healthy relationship, one that is characterized by your ability to be vulnerable with this person, one that's characterized by trust and mutual respect with this person, and with the capacity of enjoyment and fun and levity with this person. And these are three characteristics of a healthy relationship. Unfortunately, no.
Mm.
No, that's just not possible when involved with a person with antagonistic personality traits.
Mm.
And part of that is because when you are vulnerable with them, that's almost kind of more mana for them that feeds their deep sense of insecurity, right? So when we look at people with these traits that we kind of talked about, we can think about, like, Iron Man, right?
Love it.
Right. Right. And so how, like, Iron Man has that circle in the middle of his chest that kind of comes out, and like, and so think about, like, these people with this giant hole kind of right here in their center, right? And that hole, that open vacuous hole, is a deep, deep, deep injury of insecurity, right? And when things fly into this hole, we often call that an injury, right? If we're talking specifically about narcissistic personality, we call that a narcissistic injury, right? And when those injuries happen, then it's usually met with rage and reactivity. And so they're not able to be authentically vulnerable, and they're not able to receive somebody who's being authentically vulnerable. And so that actually works to feed their their injury. That it serves to feed their narcissistic traits or their antagonistic traits. And so that it's just not actually possible to be in a healthy relationship with them.
Okay. And so, or when we're talking about intimate partner relationships, but it is also possible to have these type of relationships in family systems, in the workplace, in friendships, in churches. So can you just tell us a little bit about what this looks like in these various types of relationships real quick for our audience, just so that people are able to really identify what these types of relationships look like, and then we'll go into what we can do about it.
Okay. All right. And so when we talk about having or being having antagonistic relational stress, right? That
Mhm.
is something we experience as a result of the interpersonal interactions with people who have these antagonistic personality traits. And so some of the characteristics of those interactions look like a pattern of dismissiveness, a pattern of invalidation, a pattern of minimization. Oh, your little job, your little this, right? Um, a pattern of manipulation, gaslighting, and what I want to say about gaslighting is, um, uh, all all gaslighting lies, but not all liars gaslight, right? So the difference with gaslighting is, I'm going to tell you your reality is not real and you're stupid, right? So there's this level of insult sprinkled on top of the denial of your reality. There is a consistent pattern of entitlement, as we talked about. And then there's that pattern of rage and reactivity. And so those patterns of behavior and people with those traits exist everywhere, right? And we are simply talking about when you have two humans together and one of them has these traits, and how this, if this person interacts with them, how that might show up for them as that antagonistic relational stress. And so if you are constantly being dismissed, minimized, invalidated, raged at, right? That's not limited to an intimate partner relationship. I think we do find the intensity higher in intimate partner relationships. And that's only because of the amount of time you're with your intimate partner, right? Like, you spend the most time with them. You are expecting a deeper level of connection and vulnerability with that person. But that doesn't mean your boss on your job can't be dismissive, invalidating, rage at you, minimize, gaslight. Doesn't mean that your colleague on your team, if you're, active in service in the church, doesn't mean the head of the deacon board or the usher board or whatever. It doesn't mean other people that you interact with might not be causing this same types of stress. And then, of course, in the family, right? And what do we do with that when it is a parent, right? Like, we're not, there has been lots of discussions on both sides of the street around whether adult children should go no contact with their parents, right? And there's lots of things on both to discuss there. But what happens if your parent does have these traits? What happens if you are the parent and your adult child, has these traits, right? So I just want to be clear that we're not, yes, it shows up in intimate partner relationships, but it's all human relationships have the potential to lead to antagonistic relational stress if the person you're interacting with has these traits and are interacting with you in this way.
Okay. So in this moment, I like to give my audience a chance to just breathe. Because sometimes hearing things like this can bring up so much emotion. Hearing things like this can bring up so much emotion. And now I can just hear the wheels turning. I can hear the wheels turning.
Mm-hmm.
And people are saying, now what do I do? What do I do now? How can I get out of this? How can I put boundaries in place with this person? How can I manage this? Because I have to live with this person. I have to parent this child, even though they're an adult, or I have to go to church with this person, or it's my boss, or family holidays are coming up and we're all going to be together for Christmas and for Thanksgiving. What am I going to do now? I know you got some strategies for us because we all need them. And I know you are seeing all these people rolling through your head right now. But Dr. D, she's going to give us some strategies. We are not going to be stuck here.
Yeah. I think that it's a really difficult uh, thing when we realize we're in those relationships and are experiencing antagonistic relational stress. And some of those that impact looks like the impact from this interaction could look like PTSD. It could be we could actually be experiencing trauma from these relationships. We could actually experience clinically significant anxiety and depression, and because of the nature of the cycle of of that relationship, sometimes we don't even know to seek help, right? We'll feel it in our body, right? we'll know with every interaction that constriction that shows up, and whether we're finding that we have shoulders as earrings or clenched jaw or shortness of breath, or our stomach starts flipping, we know that this interaction isn't right. And it's at a visceral level of of knowing, because what's being activated is our autonomic nervous system, right? Our brain is doing this all the time because it has one function, and that function is keep this human alive and safe. So it's constantly doing this. Is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? And then you find yourself interacting or approaching that person, or if you see their car pull in the driveway, or they get off the elevator at work, or they show up, then all of a sudden it's danger, 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 and you start to feel it. And a lot of times we describe that as walking on eggshells, right? We feel like we're constantly walking on eggshells, constantly living in a state of constriction, right? So first, we have to be aware, right? At 3D psychotherapy, when we work with people who have antagonistic relational stress, we actually have a proprietary heuristic for healing, which is awareness, acceptance, and action. And so that first step is awareness. We have to be aware of what is happening within us and between us, right? Part of the cycle of the interaction with somebody with antagonistic personality is there's often this shifting of blame, right? Again, the antagonistic person, their one role is they want to protect this Iron Man hole that's in the center of them, right? So when you fawn them and you give them praise and the grandiose narcissists and their sycophants, that fills them up like, right? The thing that feeds them is reverence and deference. Like that's the thing they want. But anything that remotely possibly challenges them, or just sometimes on a whim, right? They just feel like, I'm feeling insecure, I'm just going to rage at you. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. I know that's kind of hard to hear, because one of those patterns is within this personality. The thing that cuts out the person's self-esteem is they are telling their victim, everything is your fault and you can make this better. And if you only did X, then I would treat you better. And none of that is true. None of that is true. The antagonistic personality is being fed off of the actions and the pain that it's causing the person they're interacting with. That manna they're eating is really what is that it's reverence and deference that is really just hurting the person that they're interacting with. So it's not possible. And I think that's one of the things that keep people stuck, is not only that messaging that it's their fault and they can change it, but also that idea of hope that things could be different. And it's just not. When we have people who have this antagonistic personality, a lot of times they're super charming. They're really they know how to make people feel special. And so there are people that go out and kind of do their bidding on their behalf to kind of keep that person in that stuck cycle, right? And then sometimes there are what I call the well-intentioned folk, the hopelessly optimistic folk that say, oh, you can get back together, or they can change, or it can be different, or your marriage can be saved. But that doesn't have anything to do with your reality, because they don't know what's inside of your relationship. They don't know what is happening that is being activated and how you are being harmed in that interpersonal interaction. They just don't know, right? And so when people are faced with something that's uncomfortable, they want to make it comfortable. So they try to it's almost the same with grief, right? Oh, they're in a better place, or they're not suffering. Nobody wants to hear that when their loved one passes. There are no words that can make that pain go away. It is the reason they're saying those words is because they're uncomfortable and they want to feel better and they just want your pain to go away. Right? So their intention is maybe make your pain go away, but they're actually only exacerbating your pain, because what they're doing is, in essence, they're gaslighting you. They're basically challenging your fragile reality.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And the reason why I think it's important to talk about that is because oftentimes when people have skin in the game, meaning they're responsible for the success of your marriage, or they feel that they're responsible for the success of your marriage, coming to them for wise counsel can oftentimes leave the person who is feeling like they want out. To your point, that you feel that gaslighting. Like,
Yeah.
how dare you want to end your marriage? Marriage is a covenant.
Yeah, that's where that boundary setting work can and needs to be done. I am not okay with engaging with any conversation, being updated or informed, or even any of it. I do not want to know anything about this person. And honestly, I don't want this person to know anything about me.
Absolutely.
So do not bring any of that to me. And I'd appreciate if you don't take anything about me to them. And that's my final word on that. Like,
Okay.
I appreciate that you just respect that boundary that I've set.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times people, if they're flying monkeys, they're going to be boundary bulldozers,
Hmm.
and they're going to push back. So then we have to hold that boundary, right? And the thing with boundary setting is never a one and done.
Mm.
It's always a set and hold pattern, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then after we have held the boundary, maybe we set, hold, and reinforce the boundary. But after that, then we have choice and agency about what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if that means I'm no longer going to engage with this person because they're not respecting my boundaries, then that may be a consequence that has to happen. That's the only thing that we can do. We can't not set the boundary and then be caught up in the emotional roller coaster that is, oh my goodness, let me tell you what's going on with him. Or, oh my goodness, why don't you just give him a call? Yeah. No, that's just, again, who's going to ask somebody who hurt them to go back and make peace with their abuser? But we do it all the time. People do it. Those sycophants, those flying monkeys, and sometimes the well-intentioned folk. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing with the well-intentioned folk, I think, is if you set that boundary with them, they're likely to hold it. They're likely to say, I hear you. I'm not going to do that again. And then they won't do it again. Whereas with the flying monkeys, they're basically, you know what flying monkeys are? They're from like the Wizard of Oz, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the wicked step witch or whatever, the wicked witch would send them out to do her bidding. And so when they're out doing the bidding of the wicked witch, they're going to keep pushing. They're going to keep trying. And those are the flying monkeys and the witch go together. So if we're cutting off the witch, we're cutting off the flying monkeys.
Mm-hmm. That's good. People need to hear that. People need to really understand that no means no. You know, my cutoff game is real strong. Like, I have never struggled in that area. If I feel like someone has violated my boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and I made a decision that, you know what, this is now how our relationship is going to be. Like, I've had relationships with people that maybe they were friends, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're friends, but we're doing some kind of business together or whatever. And then they violated that friendship boundary. And I brought it to their attention, and they continued to violate that friendship boundary. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know what? This is not working for me. I don't need people in my life like this. I would like to, complete the business that we have together, and I would like to end the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And they give me pushback to say, I don't understand why you want to end the relationship. It's not that serious. It's that serious to me.
Absolutely.
And then to go a step further than to try to like block me in to make me talk to them.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like you are not hearing anything that I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is what it's like to be in a relationship with you. But you can't see yourself. So
Mhm.
rather than me continuing to go back and forth with you, why don't we just end this here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they don't have to understand. They don't have to like it. But we hold, because our boundaries are for us. They're never for anybody else. They're not weapons to make other people change. They're simply what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. And so if somebody has repeatedly bulldozed our boundaries and we're no longer okay with that, then we could choose to, like you said, block them, disconnect from them, not have them in our life. And then no matter how many times they call or try to bring it back up or do other things, we just we don't engage. And and that can be hard, but that's sometimes what has to happen. um the first step towards healing is awareness. We can't change anything we're not aware of.
Mhm.
And oftentimes we override the physical responses that are telling us danger, danger, danger. That constriction in our body, we override it. Part of the pattern of this relationship is there's often blaming, messaging such as, well, if only you would do XYZ, then I would not treat you bad, or I would not ignore you, or I would not, I would give you more time or attention or whatever, or I would not yell at you or talk to you so badly, but if you would only, right? So this constant messaging, which then the person having the stress starts to believe that they can control this, that sometimes it's their fault, right? So I equate it to kind of putting coins in a slot machine, right? At the beginning of the interaction, there was a big payout, which is called love bombing. And then once we're in this dismissive stage, we keep putting coins in. They keep telling us put coins in so that they can get back to loving you or showing you positive affirmation. And then it pays out just intermittently enough to keep us at that slot machine, right? So we have to be aware of what's happening inside of us, what's happening between us, right? And so in order to have that awareness, we need to be able to have safe spaces so we could do reality testing. Because that gaslighting of, oh, you're mistaken, you don't understand, you're slow, right? Like just these kind of negative messages. Well, if you had a better memory, this would never happen. These sort of messages that keep us on those eggshells, right? And so we really work with clients to help them ground, do that reality testing, be that safe sounding board for them and validate them. Because this relationship is a pattern of being invalidated. But yet in the therapy space, we have a pattern of validating them and letting them know that no, that was wrong. And your perception was right. And just really letting them know that that constriction in their body isn't just a fluke, especially if you're seeing it consistently as a pattern. Every time you go into the meeting, if the boss is shaming you in front of the entire team and telling you your work is subpar or you're inadequate or less than, no, that's not okay, right? And so that first step of the awareness. Then the next step, which is really difficult, is acceptance. And this is that space of accepting that your perception, your experiences, your emotions are real and valid, and true and worthy, and you did not cause this, right? You can't cure them. And so that acceptance. And then also the next harder level is accepting that this relationship is not going to be different. This person is not going to be different. And I know that's really, really difficult. But we can't get to action unless we get through acceptance. And I know that from our Christian backgrounds, love, forgiveness, belief that people can change, and that sort of thing often keeps us at that slot machine, at that space of hoping that things will be different and getting to a place of accepting that this is not likely to change. Then we would take them through that difficult journey of acceptance, and then we can work on action. And what does action look like? Action could be related to boundary setting. Action could be related to some techniques like firewalling and gray rocking. Action can look like no contact. Could look like making a hard decision to not have this person in your life anymore. And all of those things are fraught with lots of things because sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can't go no contact. We literally need this job to pay our bills or we will be homeless. But this boss is making us throw up in the bathroom every day at lunch because they're peppering us with questions or telling us we're stupid in front of the team or telling us, gaslighting us, saying, oh, where's that report? But you said it was due next week. No, I said it was due today. Just also setting us up for this constant state of constriction to the point where our blood pressure is skyrocketing. Our GI issues are always activated, and we're just really in a space of mental, physical, and spiritual dis-ease at all times. And so when we're in that space, we can use some of these techniques, like I said, of firewalling and gray rocking. And then we need a support team to help us with that reality testing. We need a safe space of our own external support system, also working with a good therapist that is well informed about antagonistic relational stress, and working with people who are impacted by people who have these cluster B personalities or these antagonistic personalities.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take another breath. This is a Selah moment. Because I can hear the wheels turning. And people are wondering right now, do I stay or go? Do I get another job? Where do I go from here? And for those individuals who decide, you know what, I don't know if I can end this relationship. I've got too much skin in the game. I have too much invested. And you're telling me that things are never going to change. And I've come to a place of acceptance that things are never going to change. But I don't know if I can take the action step to do what honors me. Why do you feel like people struggle in that area to do what honors them? If honoring you means ending the relationship and moving on with your life and putting these boundaries in place, this no contact and some of the other strategies you offered, what would prevent a person from just saying, you know what, I've had it, I'm out, I'm done?
Well, there's a number of different things that keep people in relationships with antagonistic personalities. Some might be cognitive, like a sunk cost fallacy. So the sunk cost fallacy is I've invested too much time, too much effort into this relationship to walk away, right? Like I can't leave it because I've put too much into it. That is a possibility. That is a belief. Um, the Also, there's some very practical things that keep people in this relationship, as we talked about with the job. I need a paycheck. I have to eat. I have to support my kids. Then, if we're talking about intimate partners, there is actually having children and co-parenting, right? Ending that relationship doesn't end that relationship, right? If we have children together, um, there could be barriers around if this antagonistic person is a parent. If knowing that if we go no contact with mom or dad, that means we've by default gone no contact with all of the siblings, all of the aunts, all of the cousins, all of the holidays, everybody. Like we are no longer, like we are like basically being exiled, right? And we may not want to lose all these people, but we can't be, this is the problem, and we don't want to lose all these people, right? Again, it could be we are thoroughly rooted and invested in a place, say a church home, right? I think my father was the deacon at our church for decades before I was even born, right? Like those are roots, right? And to say, oh, this huge fixture of my existence and my identity and my, life, I'm going to have to walk away and leave it. So there's lots of reasons people choose to stay, or maybe even sometimes with the coercive control, like financially. I don't think we talked about financially. Part of that antagonistic relational abuse is, especially an intimate partner and some in parents and child as well, they get you to be financially dependent on them so they can do what's called coercive control. And then we're just dependent. We can't leave because we can't support ourselves. We've not worked, or we don't have enough revenue, or we haven't worked in a while because we're raising small children and they're still dependent on us, and we would not be able to afford to live on our own and care for the children. Or even just with property and rent and things like that, it can be difficult if we are financially dependent on somebody who is causing that relational stress within us. So it's hard. It's not, this question of do I stay or do I go, will I stay or will I go, is not an easy one. It is one. That's why coming to therapy with a well-informed therapist can help them sit with that and help them get to the best decision for them at that time that they need to make. And sometimes that decision is they have to stay. And then if they have to stay, how do we survive? What do we do? What tools do we use? What techniques do we use? Right?
Mhm. And it's so good. You've given us so many tips, so many tools today. And I know that many of our viewers of this episode are going to want to reach out to you. Do you all only do in-office visits? Are you available for virtual? Are you only limited to the state of Georgia? What does it look like to get in touch with 3D psychotherapy and get the support that's needed?
Thank you for asking. So we are in Decatur, Georgia, and we actually offer both in-person and virtual appointments. And we, myself and Jacinta, we can practice here in Georgia and in Florida, but the majority of our practice is in the state of Georgia. So anywhere within the state, we can offer virtual appointments, but in the local Atlanta metro area, we do offer in person. sessions.
Go ahead and tell our listeners and our viewers where they can get in contact with you at 3D Psychotherapy.
Okay. So they can, if they're interested in learning more about the practice and or scheduling an appointment, they can go directly to our website, which is www. It's the number 3, the letter D, psychotherapy.com. If they want to stay connected and continue to get tips, dive deeper in some of these techniques that we talk about, like firewalling and gray rocking and the boundary setting, they can follow us on social media. And on Facebook, it's the same. It's the number 3, letter D, psychotherapy. On Instagram, it's the 3D psychotherapy. So those are some ways that they can stay connected.
Absolutely. And of course, all of these links will be in the show notes for you all to take advantage of this amazing, helpful resource that has been offered today. I've never dug into a conversation like this before. A lot of times, again, we talk about domestic abuse, which also includes sexual abuse and children. A lot of times we don't hear that, but that is what is also included in that domestic abuse conversation. And so I'm so grateful that we were able to dig into this conversation today around intimate partner relationships, around other relationships that we have outside of the household as well. And I hope that there was something that was said today that will help you make the decision that you are now aware, that you're going to come to a place of acceptance, and that you're going to reach out to 3D psychotherapy for an action plan, whether that is to leave or to stay. You've got to have an action plan. It's the same thing in my work as a doula. You've got to have a birth plan. You've got to have a postpartum plan. Now, sometimes those birth plans don't go like we plan, and sometimes that postpartum plan doesn't go like we plan, but at least we had a plan going into it. And it's really important to be able to do that. If you are experiencing domestic violence, we also highly encourage you to have a safety plan. And I'm absolutely sure that 3D psychotherapy could also help you with your safety planning. You can also reach out to the For Our Daughters Foundation in the event that you are outside of the state of Georgia or Florida and you need help and you need support developing a safety plan to move to the next level of safety for you and your children. All of this information will be available in the show notes. Again, Dr. Dantzler, I also call her Dr. D. Thank you so much for joining us on the Marketplace Pastors podcast. This conversation has been rich. It was the perfect way to end Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I know that there's going to be so much more that we're going to do. She's definitely going to be back. We have so much unpacking to do to help our community heal relational issues. All of this stems around relationships. And as you all know, I am an advocate for healthy relationships. And I always say, it starts with me. Thank you so much for being a guest today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of the Marketplace Pastors podcast. We'll see you back in the new year for season 4 of the Marketplace Pastors podcast. Happy holidays and happy new year to you. We'll see you soon.